Here are your hosts, Kyle Fellows and Andrew Mertig. This is the Draft Fellows Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of the Draft Fellows Podcast. Today we are covering the rest of the AFC East draft review. So if you want to check out the first episode of the series and hear about the Bills and Dolphins, follow the Draft Fellows channel on YouTube or check out the audio version on your favorite podcasting platform. I am Andrew Mertig. This is my partner, the Kyle Fellows. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing really well. I think I just need to say, and I should have said this in the first episode, the name of this podcast was not my idea. Okay, I feel like Andrew scooped up the rights for this, the name of the podcast a long time ago, and when we didn't know when we were going to get to do it, but I just feel like I need to get that off my chest that like this was not my idea.
No comment.
All right.
So
we'll dispute that.
So we're going to jump right into it today, and we're going to kick things off with the New England Patriots, as previously mentioned. Of course, the big note to make today is that at pick 3, the Patriots do take what they hope is the quarterback of the future in Drake May out of North Carolina. They bounce back in the second, get him a wide receiver in Jalen Polk from Washington. On the 3rd and 4th, they get a couple of offensive linemen, Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson, and wide receiver Javon Baker in the 4th round. Marcellus Dial, to kick off the 6th. And really interesting, bouncing back and taking another quarterback, Joe Milton, the guy who can throw it over their mountains in the 6th round. Jaheim Bell, one of my favorites to round it out in the 7th rounder. So, I think we probably have to kick this off with some Drake May conversation.
Yeah, and this is easy for me because I love Drake May, and I've loved Drake May for close to a year now. And I'm not like, typically I'm not like just trying to be super controversial. But for me, I've always said that I don't think Drake May was the most talented quarterback in this class, but I do think that there's a legitimate chance in 3 seasons he may be the best quarterback of the entire bunch. And so I'm really excited to see what he's able to do. I like that the Patriots seem pretty committed to giving him the time that he needs to develop. I think it's been reported this week even that he's running as the quarterback 3 in camp, just kind of like they're just no pressure. You're not going to start right away. Like, we just need you to learn what you need to learn. And like, we want you to be the best version of yourself for the future, not right now. And so I love that. Incredibly talented thrower of the football. I think he gives you elements of, everybody likes to throw out Patrick Mahomes because of the off schedule stuff. I like, talking about Josh Allen as a little bit of a comp there. I think there's some Justin Herbert. All those are obviously incredibly high ceiling outcomes. But I think that that's why you make the selection at 3. And this is why we heard that teams like Minnesota and others were trying to vault up to get someone like Drake May, because he has that kind of a ceiling. He also has a floor, maybe reminiscent of someone like Jay Cutler or something like that as well. But the ceiling is absolutely there, and the tools make you really excited about the future that could be ahead for the New England Patriots as they kind of turn the page to this next chapter.
Yeah, I think, the whole thing with quarterbacks in the NFL that we're seeing, we're Packers fans, so we understand the developmental process. And a lot of teams they don't have the opportunity to be that patient. But I think for the Patriots, it's going to be really, really important that they do so, that they commit to Jacoby Brissett. And even if Brissett has some struggles or maybe an injury, that they don't rush May onto the field, because I think you're going to have the ability to have some really bad habits for him. Patriots offensive line looks okay. It's pretty solid for bringing a rookie quarterback in, but I would really like to see them let the season play out. See when you can implement May. Maybe it's really late in the season, the last month or so. Let him play some there. But it's going to be really, really important, unless he absolutely blows the doors off of everything in the offseason, to not rush him into action. Because I think with some patience and with some developmental upside, you can start to see the path where he can become one of those top-notch NFL quarterbacks that you've talked about. Yeah, May was my quarterback 2. He's my number prospect, number 4 overall. I can say words, and I really love him. I think it's all going to depend on how that coaching goes, how he takes his development, and I think there's a lot of promise for him in New England.
Yeah, I think some of the evaluation is baked into situation. The Indianapolis Colts drafted a wide receiver last year that I'm totally blanking on his name. Slot receiver from
North Carolina, Josh Downs.
Josh Downs, yeah. And he was probably the most talented offensive player that Drake May has played with throughout his career. We know like he had Tez Walker this year for like a cup of coffee, but really like he didn't have a lot to work with there. And so it'll be interesting as he kind of integrates the NFL. Like I don't think anybody's going to say, we'll talk about the weapons that he has to work with in just a second here with this class. I don't think it's not crazy to think that like he instantly comes into the most talented opportunity that he's had since he's been in college in the NFL with one of the least desirable offensive groups in the NFL, which I think is super interesting. So I think some of that upside, I think, gets drawn out with more talent around him. And I think that's going to be really fascinating to watch play out. But Andrew, you want to talk about the wide receivers a little bit that he gets to potentially throw to?
Yeah, I'll kind of lump in the pass catchers in general, and we know this. The room as far as veterans is not very good. You have the ghost of Juju Smith-Schuster. You have Kendrick Bourne. Like it's not an appealing group of skill players. You hope Ramondre Stevenson comes back healthy, but yeah, in the second round they take Jalen Polk, the wide receiver out of Washington. I think there's a ton of upside there. I love their fourth round pick, Javon Baker, the wide receiver out of Central Florida. Yeah. And then, like I mentioned earlier, in the seventh round, they get Jaheim Bell, a really, really fun move tight end out of Florida State. I think he can play a little bit in the backfield. I think you can play him a little bit in line. I think you can even flex him out a little bit. Him in the seventh round, I thought was an absolute steal.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that Jalen Polk was a reach there at 37? Like, we're not here to bury anybody's like draft experience or like say that they weren't worthy of that selection. Was that reflective of where you had him on your board? I'm just curious, like where you had Polk.
I had him as my 32nd overall player. Okay. So I actually thought it was a pretty solid value. I liked him a lot. It's always hard when you have multiple really good wide receivers in a college offense. Yeah. Like how do you differentiate that? Like how much is the quarterback? How much is the scheme? How much is the individual player? How much is the fact that you're going up against number 2 cornerbacks in college, right? Like how much do you glean on that? I thought Polk was really good. At times I thought he was the better of the wide receivers. And that's not a slight. Like Rome Odunze is amazing. But I thought that Polk had his moments where he was super dominant. And I think there's some really fun developmental upside. Do I think he's a wide receiver 1, if we want to use that term, which I don't love, but like, is he going to be the best wide receiver on a really good offense? Probably not. I think he's more of a 2, but for now, like, can he operate right away and get some early playing time? Absolutely. I think so.
Yeah. I had a second round grade on him. And like in this class, like there were so many wide receivers. Like I would have probably felt more comfortable, like mid to late second at the earliest, but like early on, he was probably one of the first 5 or 6 wide receivers that I watched in the class. And I really liked him. It was just that like he kind of stacked lower because of some of the other guys who pushed up higher. And that's just kind of how it worked out. But I'm with you. He's probably more of a 2. And interestingly, like Javon Baker probably has more of the traits to be an actual 1 if anybody ends up being a 1. Like, I mean, he's lower. There's reasons he was taken in the 4th round, right? Like there's lots of things he's going to have to work out. What I love about Javon Baker is that the things that he needs to work on are all very fixable things, right? Like his consistency at the catch point, his hands, those are things that you can coach and you can work on. He has like some like weird maturity things going on that I think like will help him to get into an NFL environment and just like be able to focus on football. But those are all things that like you can help him with those things. And he loves the game and he's an acrobat at the catch point, super, super talented, actually relatively advanced as a route runner, maybe like not the best in this class, but like not a bad route runner. So there's a lot going on for Javon Baker that you get him in the 4th round. I think that there's a lot of reason to be excited for Drake May that these are the guys that they were able to get, especially because a lot of those wide receivers earlier in the draft, like kind of burned through those guys right before pick 37. So I don't know. Jalen Polk is someone that you get super excited about, but I think the tandem together, I think, makes you a lot more excited about what this group could be this year.
Yep. Last thing on the Patriots, is Joe Milton the Kirk Cousins to Drake May's RG3?
Yeah, probably. Like he's probably starting next year, right? Like this is
Okay. follow up question. Joe Milton, more likely to be a quarterback or a tight end in 2 seasons?
Oh my gosh. How many people have we done this with? There was somebody else that we tried to
Logan
convert.
Thomas?
The Eagles.
Oh.
Logan Thomas. No, the Eagles took some guy from a small Michigan school and they tried to convert him to tight end because he was massive, but he couldn't throw. But I mean, Joe Milton can throw. Like that's not the problem here. The dude can throw. I think we're not worried about that. I think it's the processing, the decision making, and those kinds of things. Interesting. I mean, in the 6th round, we're not taking any risks here, but obviously the Patriots are just trying to, revamp that quarterback room. I don't think they're hedging their bets here with Drake May. I think they have a little bit more confidence in him being the answer here. But obviously, as you said, he's going to be able to throw it over their mountains, and he's got a big arm.
Super, super fun developmental prospect. Probably doesn't turn out to be too much, but wow, like the upside there is absolutely insane. So now we move over to the New York Jets, who have a first round tackle. No surprise that they're going offensive lineman there. Olu Fashanu out of Penn State at 11 overall. In the 3rd round, they bounce back with Malachi Corley, the rack king. In the 4th round, they get running back Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. Take a quarterback in the 5th round, Jordan Travis, quarterback from Florida State, who is recovering from that late season injury. Isaiah Davis, the running back from South Dakota State, and a couple of defensive backs in the late rounds with cool names.
That's what you get here on the Draft Fellows podcast. Yeah. We don't give you the cool names. We just identify that they are.
Quantez Stiggers cool. is a cool name. Yeah,
that's pretty top, close to the top there. But Olu Fashanu, I mean, the Jets need offensive line help, right? And they've kind of skipped it recently and thought that they could like solve it in other ways. And then we saw how that worked out for Aaron Rodgers last year, not getting to actually play because the offensive line was that porous. So they make an effort here to solve it probably for Aaron Rodgers in the short term. Get someone who can be that solution long term as well. Fashanu kind of had an interesting draft cycle. Started off almost at like equal playing field with Alt as far as, could have been a top 5 pick. And then it kind of felt like he fell even to where like it was possible that he was going to go decently later than this. But there's a lot to like about Olu Fashanu, from his makeup, his character, what he brings to your team in the locker room, as well as like just being an athletic freak. They don't make many guys like this, and I think that the Jets saw the opportunity to grab him, and I think they made a great decision and won't regret trying to get like another playmaker or something in the fold, but someone who can protect that offense and keep the quarterback upright.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, of course, to protect Aaron Rodgers, they're bringing in 2 mid-30s offensive tackles. And Fashanu is the guy who is probably going to have to fill in if anybody misses any time. And, relying on Tyron Smith, for instance, given his age and injury history, is probably pretty risky. My only concern, I love Fashanu. He was my 7th overall prospect in this class. But my only concern with this approach is, like, are they going to cross-train him at right and left? And like for a young player who's already kind of raw, like, is that going to hurt his development? Maybe he's so good it doesn't matter, but I would really like to see him in a situation where he knows he is either going to start or he's only going to play one side so he can really focus on that. But overall, really love the upside. I think a couple of fun playmakers after that. Corley is a guy, you just get the ball in his hands, and he is really good. What can he run routes? Probably not. How good is he at contested catches? I don't know, really. But get the ball in his hands, and he is really, really electric.
Well, for me, like, I didn't know what to do with Corley, right? Like, because I think he's a player like you absolutely can run your offense through and like do some really creative things. But like, he's not going to be your 1. He's probably not going to be your 2. He's going to be a slot guy that like probably has limitations as a route runner, like you said. So like, where do you value that? And like, we've seen on Twitter and stuff that the Jets were pretty adamant about their need to trade up for this player, like kind of losing their minds that someone else was going to take him above where they were going to be able to take him. And then you factor in the fact that this is a team that is very familiar with the San Francisco 49ers and what they were able to do with Deebo Samuel. And it just kind of starts to make more sense, like how they might envision a role for Corley. And outside of someone like Garrett Wilson, there is a little bit of an opening for a playmaker. And I think that kind of helps you see like the path forward for Corley, where he could be kind of an impact player for this offense.
Yeah, and there's obviously going to be opportunities behind Garrett Wilson. We don't know how healthy Mike Williams is going to be. So Corley is going to have a job for sure, like a base set of plays that are just for him. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they use him. And then, Braylon Allen for dynasty fantasy football players. This was not a great landing spot. But how does Braylon Allen fit in behind Breece Hall for the New York Jets?
I mean, I guess that's the question is like, I think we all think Breece Hall is incredibly talented and like one of the better backs in the league when he's healthy. They take Braylon Allen here in the 4th. They take Isaiah Davis around later, and they already have super speed guy from Pitt, Abanikanda from last year, right? Like, as well as like another guy that's in that room that I'm blanking on right now that played significant snaps for them last year. So like, I don't think there's anything wrong with Breece Hall. This is not a freak you out if you're a dynasty owner and you're like, go sell Hall. But you kind of wonder, like, why do they think that they need to completely remake their running back room when it seems like that was a strength of this team? And I think Isaiah Davis is a talented player in his own right, limited, but talented. And Braylon Allen is a battering ram, or at least like that's the design. So it'll be really interesting to see, how do they split up these touches? Do these guys get any run this year? And what was kind of the design behind putting so much as far as resources into this running back room?
Yeah, and the clearest thing in the world with this draft class is that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh were saying our defense is fine. Like we don't need to address that at all. We are just going to give as many resources as we possibly can for Aaron Rodgers. And if Rodgers misses any time, now they have Tyrod Taylor. And we're just going to make sure that they're surrounded with as many weapons as we can, given our draft capital. And we're going to try to move forward with that.
Yeah. And Jordan Travis is clearly the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers. And we know that things have gone really well when he's had a Jordan behind him developmentally, right? Like, so clearly they saw the vision there. And Jordan Travis is the starting quarterback of the New York Jets by 2025.
Makes all the sense in the world.
Makes all the sense in the world. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show. We'll be covering each division in football over the next couple of weeks, so stick with us. From the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have you covered. So until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.